You had an altercation with her.
I got a punch that come behind my head.
He tore up a wardrobe of mine. There were some TV damages done.
I have no idea what she's talking about.
I was just done and over the physical abuse, the verbal abuse.
I suggest you stay far away from each other. Do you understand?
This is Judy Justice. Blonsey O'Barron is suing his ex-girlfriend, Sharila Williams, for stolen property and money taken from his bank account.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge.
Hello, Kevin.
Case 3056, O'Brien versus Williams.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. O'Barron, you and the defendant were a couple for a while.
Yes.
From when to when?
2021 to 2023.
When in 2023?
October.
Well, we're not there yet. October of 2023 comes up in a few months.
That was 2022, I meant.
Okay, so from 2021 to October
2022.
of 2022.
Yes, my bad.
And you lived together. According to what I've read, you took an apartment and the lease was in both your names?
Yes.
Yes, sure.
Signed.
In June.
June of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. You are in a wheelchair as a result of being shot.
Right.
When were you shot?
June 23rd,
Of what year?
2022.
Under what circumstances?
It was an altercation with my mother, my kids, and her boyfriend.
Okay, so it was somebody that you knew.
Yes.
And was that person arrested?
No.
Did you know who it was?
Yes, I know who it was.
Is there any reason why that person wasn't arrested who shot you?
I had a gun myself, and then the gun happened to go off. I didn't have an altercation with the person, so it was with somebody else. He was just there, and then he started shooting.
When you moved into the apartment with the defendant, you had not been shot.
No.
So when you were shot, you were hospitalized for a while?
Yes, I was
long?
actually in the hospital for about 3-4 months.
I'm going to come to you with some dates.
Yes, Your Honor.
You moved into this apartment together in October of 2022,
So we moved in June of 2022.
and he was shot that same month.
Yes, ma'am.
And he spent several months in the hospital.
He spent like 3 months in the hospital, yes, Your Honor.
Your complaint against the defendant is that she used some serrated.
She didn't use it. She stole it.
She stole. You were living together.
Yes.
I assume sharing expenses.
Right.
And you had a bank account.
Yes.
You were incarcerated,
Yes.
which means that whatever income you had went into that bank.
Yes, ma'am.
And the two of you, when you were in the apartment, shared expenses, including rent. How did you expect her to pay rent with you incarcerated if she didn't use your money that was going into your bank account, which she had control over?
The rent was already paid for 3 months.
You were incarcerated on what day?
I was in the hospital when the rent was already paid.
Well, you were in the hospital, but then you went to jail.
I went to jail.
Okay, you went to jail from when to when?
October till April.
The lease wasn't up until May. How was she supposed to pay rent?
That's what I'm saying. I paid
Are
the
you
rent.
telling me in October you paid October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May?
I paid for 3 months.
Which 3 months?
From October, maybe till December.
Let's say it's true. I assume you can prove to me that you paid the rent for those couple of months. What happened to December, January, February, March, and April? What about those 5 months?
We actually didn't have an agreement to...
On the lease, you were both fully
Right.
responsible for the rent.
Right.
And you were paying something
Right.
towards the rent.
Right.
Well, I'm asking you, how do you expect her to pay the rent? What was the total rent?
The rent was $750 a month, Your Honor.
And prior to going to jail, how much did you contribute towards the rent? Is not an answer.
I wasn't working at the time because my situation, from October, I was being incarcerated, and I applied for disability, and then I was waiting to get approved while I was...
Well, you got disability. That's what you're complaining about, that you took
Yes.
money out of your account. The money that came out of your account to pay some of these bills was from disability.
I wish you would pay some bills with it. That would make me feel a lot better. But she never paid no bills. She just used the money for unnecessary stuff. So...
How do you know that?
Because I have the proof. If she would pay the bills with the money, when I got home, when I get out, I will probably have somewhere to go. When I left the hospital, I had a GoFundMe. I had a little money. I was helping paying
Just a
bills.
second, you did a GoFundMe?
Yes, from the
what?
hospital, from the months I was in the hospital, so to help me with my medical needs and stuff.
How much did you collect from a GoFundMe page?
2,800 something.
Do you have an outstanding medical bill?
No, I don't. I actually had Medicaid then at the
The
time.
hospital didn't pay anything.
No, I applied while I was in the hospital.
Doesn't matter. You didn't pay anything, correct?
No.
So what did you do with the $2,800 you
No,
got
I-
from? Shh.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What did you do with the $2,800 that you got from the GoFundMe page? I'm just curious.
I actually bought a lot of stuff for me to use. When I got out, I needed a lot of stuff.
Okay, you say she took money. Did you take any money out of his account?
Yes, Your Honor, I did.
How much did you take out?
I roughly spent maybe $3,000 on bills.
Okay, and what did you spend the $3,000 on?
There was rent, there was food, there were utilities, my car note.
Well, why is he responsible for your car note? Why is he responsible for your food?
Blondie agreed to take care of me because I was not working. I stopped working when he had his incident, his shooting incident. I stopped working to take care of him, to be there for him. And so I had no income coming in. Blondie stated to me that once he received his disability, he was going to take care of me because he had been priorly living with me and not paying any bills.
Is that right, sir? That's a simple answer. She said something to me. It sort of makes sense. And all I'm asking you is the statements that she just made to me, are they accurate?
Tried to attack her with a crowbar.
Just a
Your
second. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah.
I've been in this business
He
for
got
I've been in this
physical.
business for much too long, folks. I want my mail and I didn't give it to you, so
That
he
is
went to
what
jail for
happened,
6
though.
months. Yeah, that didn't happen.
Blondie O'Barron claims his ex-girlfriend, Sharila Williams, stole his property and wrongfully withdrew money from his bank account. Sharila is countersuing for property damage.
The statements that she just made to me, are they accurate?
Somewhat.
What's not accurate? Were you living with her?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you paying bills when you were living with her? Rent, food, utilities?
Yes.
Were you paying for that?
I actually paid for food. Yeah.
Okay, so you paid for nothing. And then, prior to your becoming incapacitated, was the defendant working?
She actually was working, and then she stopped working.
She was working. What was she doing? You were living together, so you know what she was doing. What was she doing?
She wasn't really taking care of me.
I didn't ask about taking care of you.
She wasn't doing nothing.
I asked, was she working prior to your
Yes.
becoming incapacitated?
Yes.
What kind of work was she doing?
Nursing.
Nursing?
Your Honor, I'm a medical office receptionist, so I'm not a nurse, Your Honor.
Should have gotten to know you a little bit better. Okay, and on what date did you leave that job?
I stopped working in July.
You were shot in June,
June, yes.
and then you were in the hospital for a while.
Yes.
And prior to being shot, you were not in a wheelchair.
No.
When you came home, was the defendant at home?
Sometimes.
What do you mean sometimes? She was on the lease.
After a couple months from being there, she didn't want to be at the house. She was getting...
Was she with you in July?
Yes, ma'am.
Was she with you in August?
Yes.
Okay. What credit card charges do you believe exist that the defendant used your credit card without your permission?
Oh, right here.
This is a checking account statement, sir.
It's the checking account. It wasn't no credit card.
So she never used your credit card without
No,
permission?
it wasn't in a credit card.
Okay.
It was just checking account.
In January, February, and March of 2023, you were incarcerated.
Yes.
What were you incarcerated for?
It was a warrant that I have.
Your Honor, it was a warrant from a...
About it.
They had a disturbance at her location, and they arrested him from the house that we shared due to a warrant from his witness.
Okay. And was that because you called the police because you were having an altercation?
I called the police because we were having an altercation, but they arrested him due to an incident between him and his child's mother.
Okay. And when did that occur?
That occurred October 28th.
Now, what items do you say that she took from you without permission?
All my personal belongings, like clothes, shoes, everything.
When
I left with nothing at all, like when I got out.
When you got out of jail?
Yes.
Okay. When you got out of jail, what was the date that you were released from jail?
April 14th.
And where did you go?
I actually slept in the car that night because...
Where did you go the next day?
The next day, my kid's mother tried to help me find a hotel and pay for it.
And what happened to the apartment that you had been sharing with the defendant?
The week before I got out, me and the defendant, we was actually talking. When I got out, she was gonna release everything to me so we can move on. But
So you could move on?
But we both can move on. So the week before I got out, she started answering the phone from the jail. And then she had a plan to move out, but when she moved...
Well, the lease was up the next month.
I don't think...
Next month. It was a year lease.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Well, I'm telling you, it was a year lease. It was going to be up the next month.
Okay. Well, then again, she didn't want me to be there anymore.
Well, you had an altercation with her, did you not?
After my incident, she started the...
Just a second. You had an altercation with her?
We had, yes.
You had the altercation in October.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And as a result of that altercation, another warrant dropped on you from another incident.
Yes.
So I can imagine that she didn't want to be with you anymore because she had called the police on you as a result of the October incident.
No, that wasn't the reason.
Why? What was the reason?
The reason was because I wasn't good enough at the point because of my situation. I was in a wheelchair. She didn't want nothing to do with me at that point anymore.
Okay.
The only reason she actually laid me out when the doctor told me I couldn't walk anymore. I told her, you don't have to be there if you don't want to. And even my mom told her that when she seen her outside the hospital. But she kind of feels some type of way about that. And then when I told her after that, she told me, well, your mom tell me the same thing, but I choose to be here because, you know, I love you, this and that. So she laid me on, tell me, I'm gonna help you. You can come back home with this and that. And then a couple months after the low money I got from the GoFundMe was over, everything I get into altercation every other day. Because after the 2 months that I didn't have nothing to basically give her anymore, and being in my situation, it's like she was using that to, you know, take advantage of everything.
What did she take?
She took my clothes, everything that I owned. She took everything that I owned.
Your Honor, I took some of his belongings to an address that he resides at also. I dropped some belongings off over there in Independence, Missouri.
And do you know who lives there?
Yes, his brothers live there.
And what did you bring over there?
I dropped off a couple Tupperware of clothes, Your Honor. I didn't want to bring anything personally to him because I just kind of feared for my life. And so I dropped some belongings off prior to him getting out. And then once he was released out, I kind of took some time to give him some of his rest of his belongings just because I was scared.
How did you give him those belongings after he got out?
I personally handed them to him.
Where?
His address in Independence.
Where his brother also lives?
Yes.
You remember that?
No, I have no idea what she's talking about, Your Honor.
What address is on your driver's license?
Her address, actually.
Okay. Did you call anyone before you went over there with these bags of clothing?
I talked to Blondie and I told him I was going to drop his stuff off. He gave me an address to drop the stuff off.
Can I see that, please? Don't say anything.
Yep.
And she's going to show me.
I actually gave her an address, but nothing ever...
Just a second. So now you're remembering that you gave her...
Yes,
and
I did.
I'd like to see what she has, please. It doesn't say anything. I will give you your belongings. We can move on, but
it's up at the top where I'm asking him for the address.
Address or what?
And he's not sending it, but he did send me an address. I just don't have that with me, Your Honor.
Okay, but I want to tell you something, sir. In this text exchange, she says address or what? And you answer her, enjoy my money while it lasts. You remember that? And then when you got out of jail, you were on probation?
I was already on probation for something else.
What were you on probation for? For something else?
Probation violation.
Well, you don't go to jail for probation violation unless there's another underlying crime.
Blondie O'Barron has accused his ex-girlfriend, Sharila Williams, of stealing property and taking money without Blondie for property damage.
Now addressing your counterclaim, I want you to tell me what happened on October 28th.
So what happened was I came home to him tearing up different items around the house. He tore up a wardrobe of mine. There were some TV damages done. As I came in the house, we were arguing. We had been arguing.
What were you arguing about?
I no longer wanted to be with him just for the past things that I've experienced with him. I was just done and over the drama, the mental abuse, the physical abuse, the verbal abuse. My kids are witnesses to this. I was just done, Your Honor. I wanted to move on. So I called the police, and then they informed me that they were arresting him on another charge for whatever he had going on with his children's mother.
Now you can stand up. Okay. Tell me your last name.
Moore.
Ms. Moore.
Yes.
You and the plaintiff have a child together?
Yes, ma'am.
One child.
Yes, ma'am.
Plaintiff was arrested for an altercation that he had with you.
Right.
When did that happen?
A couple weeks before he was shot. He had some mail come into my house, and I didn't realize that he had mail delivered. And so he came to my residence, and he was looking for the mail, and I didn't give it to him. So I asked him to leave and so that's when he had a warrant out for his arrest for basically like disturbance of peace.
Oh, no. That doesn't make sense to me.
He tried to attack her with a crowbar.
Just a second. That
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. I've been in this
Physical.
business for much too long, folks, I want my mail and I didn't give it to you, so
That
he
is
went to
what
jail for
happened,
6
though.
months. That didn't happen, madam.
No,
Ms.
it
Moore.
was it kind of got put under domestic because he did become like violent. He wanted.
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, he wanted
Don't
his
give me this
mail.
mail business.
He wanted his mail, so he had a crowbar basically approaching my vehicle. And so my nephew went out there and tried to stop it. And so they kind of had a back and forth shoving a thing.
Just a second. So now it's getting more serious.
Yeah.
Were you, sir, arrested with regard to that domestic incident?
Yes.
Was there a trial on that case?
Yes.
What happened with that case?
They dropped it and just give me
dropped
probation.
No, they didn't drop it.
Yes,
If they
they
gave you
the charges.
Just a second. Listen to me carefully. The justice system does not put people on probation unless there is a conviction for something.
Right.
Now, they may have reduced the charges. Did you have a trial or did you plead guilty?
Plead guilty.
That's different story. You pled guilty to what charge? Her nephew, not her.
No.
Sit down. Okay. Sit down. I can rely on nothing that you tell me. So you were convicted of assault on her nephew. You were placed on probation.
I was already on probation for something else.
What were you on probation for something else?
Probation violation.
Well, you don't go to jail for probation violation unless there's another underlying crime. What was the underlying crime that time?
Driving.
Driving.
Yes.
No, driving is not a crime, sir. You were never on probation for driving.
Yes, I was.
Well, not in this country.
Okay.
Not in this country. You may be on probation if you have an aggravated DUI. You may be on probation because
Suspended license, ma'am.
Well, because you had no license.
Yes.
Even driving on a suspended license, you don't go to jail unless you had something more serious. Before that,
No, Your Honor.
you seem to have an awful lot of legal problems, sir.
I have.
You have an awful lot of legal problems. You were living with this lady. She took out money. She paid bills. Forget it. You used your GoFundMe page. I don't know what for. Here's a phone. I listened to your counterclaim. Your counterclaim didn't say much. It said he destroyed some things in your house.
Yes, Your Honor. Blondie tore up. I have pictures of
That was in October.
October.
Almost a year ago.
Yes, Your Honor.
Almost a year ago. We're almost a year later. If he destroyed some of these items, where have you been about filing a case against him?
So I realized that the police department, they put out a warrant for the damages that occurred October 28th to an iPhone of mine.
Do you have
have
a
that police report,
I'd
yes,
like to
Your
see the
Honor.
police report. You cause any damage to things in her residence?
Actually, what happened...
Just a second to see the yes or no.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, the only thing that was reported damaged was an iPhone.
Yes, Your Honor.
Period. And the police reported that it was broken front and back, nothing else. No TVs, no nothing. That's what the police reported. They spoke to you and that's what you said was damaged. Did you damage her iPhone?
No, ma'am.
How did it get damaged?
What happened was the altercation that happened between me and her. She started. I was in the kitchen, and then she was in the bedroom. And then next thing I know, I was opening the fridge. I'm sitting there, and then I got a punch that come behind my head. And then she take off running and went outside, and then called the police.
What did you use to call the police? Is not an answer. What did you use to call the police?
My cell phone, Your Honor.
Yuck. Your counterclaim is dismissed. So is your claim, sir. I suggest you, if he has violent propensities, you think twice. Be smart. Goodbye. Both of you. Goodbye.
This court is adjourned.
Blondie freeloaded off of me for a year and a half.
I don't think it was fair enough. I didn't really get my point across.
The final straw is my kids. My kids had endured enough, and it was just time for a change for us.
Forgive her. I guess she needed the money more than I do. I'm not really mad about it. It's okay.
I'm okay with the judge's decision today. I just gonna get my protection order.
The halls of justice often echo with the heavy footsteps of those seeking closure. But inside the courtroom of Judge Judy Justice, the atmosphere was thick with the weight of a shared history that had long since soured. The case numbered 3056 was not merely a dispute over currency and belongings. It was a post-mortem of a relationship that had spanned from the year 2021 to the cooling embers of October 2022. Blondie Oberon, a man whose life had been irrevocably altered by a single day in June, sat in his wheelchair, his eyes fixed on the woman he once called his partner. Sharila Williams stood opposite him, her posture a blend of weariness and defiance, ready to defend her actions against a man who now began with a familiar call to order. All rose as Judge Judy Justice took her seat, her presence a beacon of no-nonsense wisdom in a room filled with confusion. She looked down at the documents before her, noting the names Oberon and Williams. The primary question was simple yet layered in complexity. What happened to the life they had built together when the world turned upside down? Blondie and Sharila had shared a home, a lease signed in the month of June in the year 2022, a time that should have been a beginning, but instead marked the onset of a series of unfortunate events. Blondie recounted the timeline with a hesitant memory. He initially claimed their relationship ended in October 2023, only to be gently corrected by the judge, who reminded him that such a date had not yet arrived on the calendar. He adjusted his statement to October 2022. The room felt smaller as the details of that fateful June came to light. On the 23rd day of June in the year 2022, Blondie had been shot. The circumstances were murky, involving an altercation with his mother, his children, and a boyfriend of a family member. It was a chaotic scene where a gun he possessed had gone off, leading to a 3 or 4 month stay in a hospital and a permanent transition to life in a wheelchair. While Blondie lay in his hospital bed, the world outside continued to $150 a month. Sharila, who had been working as a medical office receptionist, found herself at a crossroads. She testified that she had stopped working in July 2022, shortly after the shooting, to dedicate herself to Blondie's care. However, care and love often struggle under the pressure of financial instability. Blondie's complaint was rooted in the belief that Sharila had stolen money from his bank account while he was subsequently incarcerated from October until April. He argued that since the rent had been prepaid for 3 months, there was no reason for his disability funds to be touched. Sharila, however, painted a different picture of their domestic reality. She admitted to spending roughly $3,000, but she maintained that every cent was funneled into necessities of survival: rent, food, utilities, and her car note. She explained that Blondie had agreed to take care of her because she had sacrificed her income to be his primary caregiver. The judge questioned why Blondie should be responsible for her personal expenses, to which Sharila responded with a history of their arrangement. Before his injury, he had lived with her without contributing to the bills, and he had promised that his disability payments would be their shared lifeline once they arrived. The narrative took a darker turn as the court explored the reasons behind Blondie. It was a history of volatile situations. A woman named Ms. Moore, the mother of Blondie's son, was called to the stand. She spoke of an incident involving mail and a crowbar, a moment where a simple disagreement escalated into a perceived threat of violence. Blondie had eventually pleaded guilty to an assault on her nephew, a conviction that landed him on probation and eventually back in a jail cell. This cycle of conflict seemed to be the silent architect of the relationship's demise. Blondie's grievances extended beyond the bank account. He claimed that upon his release on April 14th, he was left with nothing. No clothes, no shoes, and no home. He described a night spent sleeping in a car before the mother of his child helped him find a hotel. He accused Sharila of holding his belongings hostage and refusing to answer his calls from jail during his final week of custody. Sharila countered this by stating she had dropped off tubs of his clothing at his brother's address in Independence, Missouri. She confessed that she did so out of a deep-seated fear for her own safety, wanting to avoid a face-to-face encounter that might lead to further trauma. A text exchange was presented as evidence, a digital ghost of their final communications. In it, Sharila had asked for an address to deliver his things, to which Blondie had bitterly replied, telling her to be palpable in the courtroom. Sharila's counterclaim involved property damage, alleging that Blondie had destroyed a wardrobe and televisions during an argument on October 28th, the day he was arrested. However, the police report from that day only noted a damaged iPhone, broken on both the front and the back. Blondie denied the destruction of the phone, claiming instead that he was the victim of a physical strike. He described standing in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator, only to be punched from behind by Sharila before she fled the house to call the authorities. When asked what she used to call the police, the answer was inevitable: the very cell phone that was the subject of the damage claim. Judge Judy Justice, having heard the tangled web of accusations and defenses, reached a conclusion rooted in the preservation of peace. She dismissed both the claim and the counterclaim. The financial disputes were a wash, a byproduct of a poorly managed life shared between two people who were no longer compatible. She saw the patterns of behavior, the warnings of violence, and the mutual exhaustion. Her final advice was a stern yet compassionate command: stay far away from each other. She spoke to the women in the room, expressing her concern for their willingness to live in fear of a man with violent propensities, urging them to choose a path of safety and self-respect. Seemed to clear. Sharila reflected on a year and a half of struggle, realizing that the final straw was the well-being of her children. She was ready to seek protection, order, and move on toward a life of stability. Blondie, in his own way, seemed to accept the end, offering a quiet forgiveness and a hope that the money he lost would serve whatever need Sharila had. It was a quiet conclusion to a loud chapter of their lives, a reminder that true justice is sometimes found not in a monetary award, but in the freedom to start over, wiser and unburdened by the ghosts of the past. The story ended not with bang of a gavel, but with the silent realization that love, when stripped of respect and safety, becomes a debt that no amount of money can ever truly repay. The lessons of Case 3056 remain in the room, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the necessity of walking away when the heart no longer feels at home. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the courtroom, casting long and golden streaks across the polished mahogany benches. There was a quiet hum of anticipation in the air, the kind of stillness that precedes the unraveling of human stories. In the heart of this temple of law, the atmosphere was thick with the weight of past choices and the hope for a clear resolution. This was the sanctuary of Judge Judy Justice, a place yet always with an underlying hope for the better nature of the people involved. The court officer stood tall, his voice resonating through the chamber as he announced the commencement of proceedings. All rise, he commanded, and the small crowd stood in unison. Have a seat, please, he added as the judge entered. The judge looked toward the parties with a keen and perceptive gaze. Hello, Judge, the voices whispered back in a chorus of respect. The official record noted the beginning of case number 3056, the matter of Oberon versus Williams. The judge offered a brief thank you, and the parties settled into their respective positions, ready to recount the chapters of their lives that had led them to this moment. Mr. Oberon, the judge began, her voice steady and clear. You and the defendant were a couple for a while. Is that correct? Blondie Oberon, a man whose life had been marked by both struggle and resilience, sat in his wheelchair. He looked up and replied that yes, it was true. The judge inquired about the timeline of their relationship. From when to when did this union last? Blondie took a breath, searching his memory for specific dates that now seemed like distant echoes. From 2021 to 2023, he answered. The judge pressed for more detail, asking when in 2000 Blondie mentioned October, but the judge, ever observant of the calendar, noted that October 2023 had not yet arrived. Blondie quickly corrected himself, explaining that he meant 2022. So, from 2021 to October of 2022, the judge summarized. Blondie agreed, acknowledging his error with a quiet nod of his head. The narrative of their shared life included an apartment, a place that was supposed to be a foundation for their future. The judge noted that the lease was in both of their names. Blondie confirmed this, stating that they had signed the lease in June of 2022. It was a significant month, for it was also the month when Blondie's life changed forever. The judge observed that he was in a wheelchair as a result of shooting. She asked for the circumstances of that fateful day, June 23rd of 2012. Blondie explained that it was an altercation involving his mother, his children, and a boyfriend. He knew the person who had fired the weapon, yet no arrest had been made. When the judge questioned why the shooter remained free, Blondie admitted that he had a gun himself and that it had gone off during the chaos. It was a complicated situation, a moment of high tension where shadows and fear had collided. When they moved into the apartment. Following the shooting, he spent several months in the hospital, approximately 3 or 4 months of recovery and reflection. Sharila Williams, the defendant, stood across from him, her expression a mix of weariness and resolve. She confirmed that they had moved in June and that he had been hospitalized shortly thereafter. The core of Blondie's complaint was that Sharila had taken money from his bank account and stolen his property while he was later incarcerated. He insisted that she had not just used the money but had stolen it. The judge looked at the financial reality of their situation. They were living together, sharing expenses, and Blondie had a bank account that received income while he was in jail. He had been incarcerated from October until April. The judge pointed out that the lease did not end until May and questioned how the rent was supposed to be paid if Sharila did not use the funds available in the account. Blondie argued that the rent had already been paid for 3 months. He claimed to have paid for October, November, and December, but the judge was curious about the remaining months, January through April. Blondie admitted there was no formal agreement for him to pay during that time, but they were both fully responsible for the rent according to the lease. The total rent was $750 a month. Before his incarceration, Blondie had not been for disability and was waiting for approval. When the disability payments finally arrived, they became the source of the conflict. Blondie complained that Sharila had used the money for unnecessary items instead of paying the bills. He believed that if she had managed the money properly, he would have had a place to live upon his release. He also mentioned a GoFundMe page that had been set up while he was in the hospital, which had collected $2,800 to help with his medical needs. Since his medical bills were covered by Medicaid, the judge asked what had happened to that money. Blondie explained that he had used it to buy things he needed for his life after leaving the hospital. Sharila was given the opportunity to share her side of the story. She admitted to taking money from the account, roughly $3,000, which she spent on rent, food, utilities, and her car note. The judge questioned why Blondie should be responsible for her car and her food. Sharila explained that Blondie had agreed to take care of her because she had stopped working to become his primary caregiver after the shooting incident. She had been a medical office receptionist, but had left her job in July to be by his side. She claimed Blondie promised to support her once his disability payments arrived, as he had previously lived with her without contributing to the bills. Blondie denied this, and the courtroom shifted as the judge addressed counterclaim. Sharila alleged that Blondie had destroyed her property. She described an incident on October 28th where Blondie, in a fit of rage, had torn up a wardrobe and damaged televisions in their home. She stated that she no longer wanted to be with him because of the mental, physical, and verbal abuse she had endured. She wanted to move on for the sake of her children. On that same day, the police were called, and Blondie was arrested because of an outstanding warrant related to an incident with the mother of his child, Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore was called to testify. She explained that Blondie had been arrested for a disturbance at her residence a few weeks before he was shot. He had come looking for mail and became violent when she would not give it to him. She described a scene where he approached her vehicle with a crowbar, leading to a physical confrontation with her nephew. Blondie eventually pleaded guilty to a charge of assault on a nephew and was placed on probation. The judge noted Blondie's extensive legal history and expressed skepticism regarding his claims. The judge reviewed the evidence of the property damage. While Sharila claimed televisions had been destroyed, the police report only mentioned a damaged iPhone. Blondie denied breaking the phone, claiming that Sharila had attacked him from behind while he was at the refrigerator. When asked, could not provide a clear answer. Ultimately, the judge found that neither party had provided sufficient evidence to sustain their claims. The counterclaim was dismissed, and Blondie's claim was also dismissed. The judge offered a stern piece of advice to both individuals, suggesting they stay far away from each other. She spoke directly to the women involved, expressing her concern that such articulate and capable individuals would choose to live in fear of a person with violent tendencies. She emphasized the importance of self-respect and the courage to walk away from toxic situations. As the court adjourned, Sharila expressed a sense of relief, stating that it was time for a change for her and her children. Blondie, reflecting on the outcome, seemed to accept the decision with a quiet grace, suggesting that perhaps Sharila needed the money more than he did. The story ended not with victory of one over the other, but with a lesson on the value of peace and the necessity of moving forward toward a brighter and more positive future. The echoes of the gavel faded, leaving behind a sense of hope that all involved would find a path toward healing and light. The halls of justice were filled with a quiet hum on that bright morning as the heavy doors of the courtroom swung open to reveal a scene of deep human complexity. This was the sanctuary of Judge Judy, a place where truth was sought through the tangled webs of the sphere was thick with the scent of old paper and the earnest hope for a fresh start. Into this room came Blondie Abron, navigating the polished floors in his wheelchair, a man whose life had taken a dramatic turn during the warm months of the year 2022. Across from him stood Sharila Williams, a woman whose presence spoke of a shared past that had slowly crumbled under the weight of unforeseen circumstances. The bailiff called the court to order with a voice that echoed against the high ceilings. Case number 3056 was officially underway. Judge Judy, a woman of immense wisdom and a sharp wit that could cut through any fabrication, looked down from her bench. She peered over her glasses, her eyes scanning the faces of the two people before her. She saw not just a plaintiff and defendant, but two individuals who had once shared a life, a home, and perhaps even a dream or two. Mr. Abron, you and the defendant were a couple for a while. The judge began, her voice steady and inviting. Yes, Blondie replied, his voice carrying a hint of nostalgia. It was a journey that lasted from the year 2021 until October of the year 2022. He corrected himself quickly, realizing he had originally thought of the future instead of past. The misunderstanding of the years was a simple slipping on a period of life that felt both like an eternity and a fleeting moment. The two had shared more than just time. They had shared a home. In June of the year 2022, they had signed a lease together, a document that bound them to a small apartment with a rent of $750 a month. It was meant to be a sanctuary, a place where their future could take root. However, the month of June held a different destiny for Blondie. It was on the 23rd day of that month that a life-altering altercation occurred. It was not a scene of grand tragedy, but rather a complicated moment involving his mother, his children, and a boyfriend. A gun had been present, and in the chaos, it had gone off. Blondie found himself facing a new reality from the seat of a wheelchair. The months that followed were a blur of sterile hospital walls and the long road to recovery. For 3 or 4 months, Blondie remained under medical care. During this time, the world outside continued to move. Sharila, who had been working as a medical office receptionist, made the choice to stop working. She wanted to be there for him, to provide the care and support that a partner gives when the shadows grow long. It was a gesture of love, yet it created a financial vacuum that neither was fully prepared to fill. While Blondie was in the hospital, a GoFundMe page was a kindness of the community, raising $2,800. This money was intended to help with medical needs and the transition back to daily life. Blondie used some of it to purchase items he needed for his new circumstances, but as the funds began to dwindle, the tension in their shared home began to rise. The plot thickened when Blondie faced legal troubles that led to his incarceration from October until April the following year. It was during this period that the central conflict of the lawsuit emerged. Blondie accused Sharila of taking money from his bank account without permission, while Sharila maintained that the funds were used to keep their lives afloat. I roughly spent maybe $3,000 on bills, Sharila explained to the judge. She spoke of rent, food, utilities, and even her car note. She believed that since she had sacrificed her income to care for him, it was only fair that his disability payments helped support her. Blondie, however, felt a sense of betrayal. He had hoped the money would be there to provide him with a stable place to go once he was released from jail. Judge Judy listened with the patience of a person who had heard 1,000 stories of love turned into ledger entries. She questioned the logic of the car note and the food expenses, seeking to understand the boundaries of their agreement. It became clear that there was no formal contract, only the people who believe they are in it for the long haul. The courtroom drama took a turn when Sharila presented her counterclaim. She spoke of a day in October when the atmosphere in their home had turned sour. She described Blondie tearing up a wardrobe and causing damage to a television. She felt the weight of mental, physical, and verbal abuse, reaching a point where she simply wanted to move on for the sake of herself and her children. The police were called, and that was the day Blondie was arrested on a warrant related to a previous incident with the mother of his child, Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore was called to the stand. She was a woman who spoke with clarity and poise, sharing the details of a disagreement over mail that had occurred before Blondie was shot. She mentioned a crowbar and a confrontation with her nephew, a story that added another layer to the complex portrait of Blondie's life. Blondie had eventually pleaded guilty to a charge of assault on the nephew and was placed on probation. Judge Judy, ever the guardian of common sense, looked at the evidence before her. She saw a police report that mentioned a damaged iPhone, but made no mention of wardrobes or televisions. She saw a checking account statement that reflected the chaotic spending of a couple in crisis. She saw two people who were once close but were now separated by a vast canyon of resentment and misunderstanding. With a sharp rap of the claim and the counterclaim were dismissed. She suggested that they stay far away from each other. A piece of advice meant to foster peace and safety for everyone involved. She spoke directly to the women in the room, urging them to be smart and to recognize the importance of living without fear. As Blondie wheeled himself out of the courtroom and Sharila walked toward the exit, there was a sense of finality in the air. The legal battle was over, but the journey toward healing was just beginning. Sharila felt a sense of relief, a chance to find a new path for her and her children. Blondie, though disappointed, expressed a quiet forgiveness, acknowledging that perhaps she had needed the money more than he did in that moment. The story ended not with a grand victory for one side, but with a quiet lesson in the value of independence and the necessity of clear boundaries. It was a reminder that even in the midst of conflict, there is a possibility for growth and the hope for a brighter, more positive future. The sun continued to shine outside the courthouse, casting long shadows over the pavement as two lives, once intertwined, began to move in separate directions, each toward their own version of peace and clarity. The judge sat back in her chair, watching the empty courtroom for a moment. She knew that justice was not always about who won or lost, but about providing a space for the truth to be heard. In the end, the most important outcome was the inspiration to live better, to love more wisely, and to cherish the freedom of a new beginning. This was the essence of the day, a chapter closed so that a new and more hopeful one could be written in the lives of those who had stood before her. Everyone left with the understanding that while the past cannot be changed, the future is a blank page waiting for the ink of better choices and kinder hearts. Justice had been served, not just through the law, but through the enduring power of human resilience and the simple, quiet beauty of starting over.